All right, so you've created this killer web application or this website, and it's in JavaScript, or your base code is in JavaScript, and you don't want anyone to check it. You don't want people right-clicking and checking the source code. Um, how do you protect against that? So there are generally two ways that I've seen people try to protect against that is removing the ability to right-click on the website or minifying the JavaScript, basically. Um, taking away the right click works for some sites. Sites where sites where your user doesn't have to right click on anything or copy and paste anything. It gets very annoying, for example, when I visit sites and, for example, I just want to copy a name or a phrase on Google, search it, and I can't because they're taking away the ability to do that. It gets annoying. So if you don't want to take away that functionality from your users, not make your application, annoying, then you could use this method that I'm going to show you. The other method, minifying your JavaScript, works really well as well, but that only works in production. That works when your code is, airtight. You don't have to make changes. You're not doing any testing, live testing. That works. But what if, for example, you've developed the code on your personal, server. You want to go live, you want to go check it live, have it out there for a month or so, have people using it, tweaking the code a little bit. A minified version of the JavaScript doesn't really help you when debugging, right? So with debugging, so that's another problem you might have. So what I developed this code like about 2 years ago, I think, a year or 2 years ago. Um, I stopped doing it for two reasons, and I'm gonna explain these two reasons at the end of it. But let's go through this and see how this works. So first, you need two functions. So you have two functions. One function loads the name of your script. It loads the name of the script. Where does it load it from? It loads it from a PHP file where you would have the names of the scripts that you have. For example, right here, over here, is where I have the names of my scripts. I'm not going to be using these here. Get rid of these. So here I have the names of three scripts: async.js, library.js, and demos.js. And here they are in here. Okay. Server, not going to use server. Okay, right, so in tutorials right here, so we have the async.js, demo.js. Oh, so this is demo. Gotta change the name here or it's not going to work, right? And the library.js, right? So you want to load one of these three scripts. So I have a PHP file where I have an array, and in the array I have the names of the scripts that I want to load. So for example, I have a test. If it's set post file index, you're going to put the file index into the array, and it's going to return the JS file that you want to load. So if you come over here, right, I don't want to go through all of this because most people who've done JavaScript and who've done any Ajax using a native JavaScript would understand this, but I'll go over it quickly. So you have the URL, the function, and the index, right? So you're going to do an XML HTTP request, right? If you notice here, if it's basic, let's see, if you're using Chrome or Firefox, you're gonna have this. If it's ActiveX or if it's Internet Explorer Edge, then this is what's it's gonna look for. All right. You have your unready states. If it's 4 or 200, then the response, it returns a response. The response text goes into the function, which is this. It's a post. You put the URL, you put true. You set the request header, which is content type, blah, blah. And you're sending the index. This is what you're sending. This is what's going down to your server. All right. So this is the first function, and it's going to return, basically the response is it's going to return this. This is what's going to come back. The name of the JS file that you want to insert into your DOM. All right. The next function is the function that loads the file name into your DOM. So basically, you're going to create a script element. The type is text JavaScript. The source is the source that you got from the PHP file. So you're gonna create the script, name it script. The type text/JavaScript. The source is the source that you got from the PHP file, and you're gonna load your script. So your script unload. It's gonna take a while. We need R to stop it from, for example, when you load something, when you're trying to do the unready state change, it's gonna load for it's gonna be recursive. I would call it recursive. It's gonna load. It's gonna keep loading until one of these states is found. Now, if you're doing, for example, a progress bar, then you wouldn't put these conditions. You would probably leave it, and as it loads, it's gonna keep loading. It's gonna keep looping and looping until the whole thing is finished. And that's the way. That's a way you could do a progress bar. Maybe I'll show you how you do a progress bar using this. So we need the R equal false, right? If these conditions are true, right? So if the state is complete, right? Or if the state is this is not undefined, or if it's undefined, or if it's complete, right? Then R is going to be true. That means everything's working. While R is true, it's not going to pass again, because here, for this to work, R has to be false. And here we begin with R being false, right? Then the callback function is going to send the script, right? The callback function is send the script. Now, I only put this in case the callback function is only if you want, the script, but it's not really necessary. What's really important is in this part right here, where we're gonna insert the loaded script into the DOM. So we get element by tag name script. So for example, if you already have any script in your file, in your HTML file, you want to insert the new script after that script that's already in your file. So I'm looking for the position of the last script, not the last script, but the position that I put inside of this function. So let's say, for example, you have a jQuery. You're loading jQuery, and after jQuery, you want to load your file asynchronously. Then you would put your position, right? You would put your position equals 0, for example, so that it loads after 0, right? It loads after 0. Let's say, for example, you have two files already. So you have a jQuery file, and you have another file that you don't really care about hiding, but you want to put the file that you're going to load in between the jQuery and your file, your other JavaScript file. So you put 0 as well, because it comes after 0. It goes in between the two of them. If you wanted to come after the two of them, then you would put 1. So it comes after 0, 1, and then it goes after, right? Here we're gonna put insert SBD, s dot insert before parent node script and s-dot, right? And that's basically it. Now let's go back up here, right? So you created a function. This is the function. Then you're putting the function. So I have it. It's called name loader, right? So we have name loader, JavaScript, file name, PHP. The function, right? The callback function, the data, that's going to come back from the callback function. And then inside of this, we have the load script function that we already put here. So what we want to do is first, we want to get the name. After we get the name, right, or we get the name of the file, then we're going to load the file. We're going to load the script with load script, right? And after that, it should work, right? In name loader, we have so the URL, the function, and the index, right, or the parameters that you want to set for your loading. So for example, I have file index equals 0 in the JavaScript file name PHP. I'm going to post file index. The file index is equal to 0, so then that means it should load the script that is in the index of the array 0, right? The index 0 of the array. So for example, here it should load async.js, right? So I come back here, I have the file index equals 0, right? So it should load, and all of this should load, and when it loads, it's in the DOM, right? All right, so let's test this, right? We're gonna test this. Where is the async? Let's load the async so we see what's gonna, right? It should come up and say it works, right? It should come up and say it works. All right, so let's test it. All right. All right, so first thing we got back is the name, right? Because here, if you can see, where are we? All right, here I wanted to see. I didn't use console log because I like the alerts. It's a little bit more. It's fun, more fun to use the alerts. So here is the first one. So name loader, it goes down, blah blah blah. It finds this, gets this, echoes this, returns this, and here it is. All right. After that, it's going to load. It could go into load script. So let's see what's after I click OK. Here it is. Now this is exactly where your script is. Localhost tutorials async.js, right? Which is this part right here, script source. This is your script source. All right. Now after that, we get it works. That means that your script was loaded into the DOM. All right, your script, it works, was loaded into the DOM. All right, now let's test it with something else. So let's test file indexed 1. So you want to load, the second file in your PHP file. So it would be loading library.js. What does library.js say? This is library.js. All right, let's test it. Again, library.js, library.js. This is library.js. Means it's inside the DOM, right? Let's see what else. We're going to do the next one, which is going to be demo. All right, let's go over here. Let's test it. Demo.js. That's where your demo.js is. This is demo.js. So it loaded the demo file, which is this. This is demo.js. And basically that's it. Now there are a few drawbacks with this. If you're working on developing something, application, and you're making changes regularly, like say every 30 minutes you're making changes, then because it's loaded this way, it's gonna be in the cache and it's not gonna change for a while. If you want this to refresh every time it loads, which for production purposes I wouldn't recommend, because if your JavaScript file is really big, then it's gonna take a while for the page to load. The page is gonna take a while to load. So it would be best if you let it load, stay in cache, so your page loads faster. But if you're developing and you want to see the changes that you're making in your JS file, in this part right here, I would add something random equal, let's say, percentage date, right? And here you would say date is equal to date ms, not date, let's call it time, because we're not really doing the day, we're doing the time, right? And there is what's happening there is it's loading the seconds, right? It's creating the seconds, minutes and seconds. So it almost always guarantees that the file that's being loaded is always going to be different, right? If you do this and you put this at the end of your JS file, then it's always going to be different. Well, not all. There's a possibility that because it's just minutes and seconds, it's going to be a possibility. But concurrently, like if one comes after the other, it's very unlikely that they're the same minute and seconds. So it will reload the JS file. That's if you want to do it this way. If not, you don't need to, right? All right, now the drawbacks. Okay, yeah, that was one drawback. The other drawback is if someone really wants to get, if someone really wants to get to your JS file, they can just use inspect document, right? They can inspect the document. So if you notice here, I could just click on sources and I have my, oh, wait a minute. Oh, okay. Okay, yeah, no. Yeah, you click on the sources and you could find all of the sources of your HTML file. Even if they're asynchronously loaded, you can find them, right? Let's go back here. If I change this and I go back to 0, all right? You see, this is random. It works. What happens is, now it changes, and you could get to the source. It really doesn't matter. If someone's really smart enough and someone's a really good developer, they're gonna be able to get to your JS files, even even if you try to hide it, even if you try to load it asynchronously. But if it's someone who's not really good at code, I mean, if it's someone who's really good at coding, they're really not gonna want to go and steal your source code. I mean, if they're really good and they know these techniques, they're not gonna want to get to your JavaScript code. Who's gonna want to go to get your JavaScript code? Coders who are not really that good, like who are not able to create their own stuff. They're gonna try to steal your code, or they're gonna go in and read it, try to figure it out, and probably create their own. But basically, it's someone with not a lot of experience who's gonna try to steal your code. And yeah, I mean, it could be a kind of a way to deter someone from doing this, because if someone goes in, they right click and they check, for example, I'm going to right click here view page source, and I see this. I'm not really good at it. I don't know what's going on, right? All I see is name loader, blah, 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 blah. I don't know what's going on. I don't know. I have to be really, really, have a lot of experience to kind of understand what's going on. I'm not putting any PHP files. I'm not saying what a file is. All I know is file index equals 0. I don't know what's going on. And then there's no other script. What's going on here? I don't know what's going on, right? So, and I see this and it deters me. I'm like, oh shit, I don't know what this is. I'm going to leave it here, right? But if someone really is really determined, then they could just, click inspect document and go in and check your sources.